In this video, I'll show how to manage your team in your framework of Explorer Sky. This includes adding new members to the team, which can level up unlike guest members, changing stats of members in the team, removing members of the team, adding others, and keeping their levels, and finally, how to change the leader. I'll first start by explaining how to apply special process, which will be heavily used. Then I'll show how the team and the assembly is managed by the game engine, and I'll end up showcasing some useful special process. But first, you should make sure you have at least Sky Temple 1.3.4, may as well be 1.3.6, as it fixes a critical issue related to European base game. So, what are special processes? There are kind of custom functions which can be used to perform custom tasks. They are written in assembly, although you won't need to know it to follow this guide. The base game comes with a number of them, but you can also find existing one already written which can be imported into the game. Each special process has an ID. The usual way to call a special process is to use the function processSpecial, the ID of the special process, the first argument and the second argument. They are required to have two arguments, and those arguments are numbers. To add custom special process, you need to apply a patch. So first, it's usually a good idea to make a backup of the ROM, except maybe if it's a clean ROM, you don't need to mind about that. And second, you need to apply the extract SP code patch, which can be found in the utility tab in the patches menu. Once you're here, you just select the line of the patch and click apply. When working with special process, once imported, you won't be able to get its name back, just its ID. So it's a good idea to take notes in the form of a table when you have the name of or the function of the special process, its ID and its effect ID, which is something else which is usually isn't needed, but still a good idea to take note. You can use the above template at least for the columns. To add a special process, you need to have the file for it. It's usually in a file ending with .ism. If they are on GitHub, you can press the raw button, then Ctrl S to save them locally. They usually work out of the box for the US version of the game, but the EU version needs some adaptation. To adapt the special process to work with the European version of the game, you need to open it in a code editor, like for example, Notepad or KOed, LibreOffice or Word Aaron code editor. So, you should add a semicolon before any lines under for US, and remove semicolon for lines starting with dot under for EU until the dot create. Then you also need to change the number in the code in the dot create codeout.bin line to be the value of the proc start address in the EU section instead of the one in the US section. Remember to keep the 0x at the start, and that hexadecimal number can also contain characters, which aren't usually numbers. And it then should work with EUROM once you save it. Then, to import the special process, you need to go to the Special Process Effects list in the Effect Code tab. Press the plus button to add a new effect ID. Take note of the new ID in the effect ID column of the table after you have added the name to, or the description of the function, and then click the Import Code button and select your ISM file. If you have an error, that if it's about missing RMIPS, it's an issue with your installation of SkyTemple, otherwise the patch have an issue. You should now go to the Special Process Effects tab and click the Add Special Process button. This will add a new entry at the bottom of the list with an effect of 0. You should take note of the ID in the Special Process ID column of the table you created. Then you should set the effect column to the effect ID you took note at the previous step. You now added a new special process. Oh, and if you have the debugger open, you need to first save the ROM, then click the reload button under the emulator window. I now explain how the team and the assembly is managed. The team, sometimes called party, is a group of Pokémon you control in dungeons, excluding guesties. They can have up to 4 members and have at least one player character. On the other side, there is the Shimetsu assembly. They contain the recruited Pokémon as well as the hero and the partner. Pokémon in the team reference an entry in the assembly. Both lists starts, like most stuff in programming, at 0. In the example above, I show a relation between a team and an assembly. The first element in the team is the player character, which is usually the first element in the assembly too. Any other element in the team can be in any order of the assembly. So for example, the first companion can be the recruit, which is for example located at the ID 5, and the second companion might be the partner, which is the second element in the list, with the ID 1 as it starts with 0. So about the ID of the Pokémon in the assembly. The hero is at the ID 0, the partner is at ID 1, and then new recruits will be added in the next 3 slot available, but will ignore the 5 first one. So the first recruit will be at ID 5, the second recruit will be at ID 6, etc. As the player character need to be at ID 0 in the assembly, you need to swap Pokémon to put them in this position when you want to change the player. To ensure that the player gets kicked out the dungeon when an ally is KOed, the location of recruitment of the given ally need to be either 215, which corresponds to the page where you get the partner, or between 236 and 240 included, which correspond to Armaldo's shelter, Triagon location, and the Barren Valley. For this to enter into effect, you also need to have the performance progress list bit 7 set to 0, which is the default. When you want to change information of Pokémon in the team, you first need to disband it. You can then fully change stats of Pokémon, of any Pokémon in the assembly, and then you need to assemble the team, be it the same or different one. I now show various special processes which can be used in your hack. The first special process I showcase is the remove party special process. I also called it the disband team once. It simply removes all the Pokémon in the current team, so you may change this Pokémon in the assembly without worrying of having those changes being overwritten by Pokemon in the current team. The next special process is swap mentry. It simply swaps two Pokemon in the assembly, and you need to provide it with the ID in the assembly of the two Pokemon. All of their data are swapped, including their name. This is particularly useful to change the player, as it needs to be at the position 0 in the assembly. Keep in mind that the ID of the old player changed, and so you need to reference it with its new ID, which is the ID of the Pokemon with which it was swapped. There is the new @recruitable special process, which adds a new Pokemon to the assembly without using the recruitment list and with the correct stats corresponding to its level. The argument 1 is simply the ID of the Pokemon, which is displayed in the list of Pokemon in Sky Temple. To recruit the female version of the Pokemon, if it exists and isn't the default one, you need to add 600 to the Pokemon ID. The second argument is the level of the Pokemon multiplied by 256 plus the recruitment location ID. For example, for a level 30 Vulpix, with a recruitment location of the Applewood, which has the ID 7, you need to calculate 30 times 256 plus 7 for the second argument. Then, there are multiple special processes made by ADEX, many of which allow to edit many stats of the monster in the assembly. The exact way to use them differ, but information can be found in the top of the assembly file. To recreate the team, you need to call the special process 51, which is a built-in special process. It sets the team to only the player at assembly ID 0. After you initialize the team with the player, you need to add new members. This can be done with the add mentry to party. The first argument is the ID of the Pokemon in the assembly. Remember that the party can have only up to 4 members, player included. This slide shows example of a script using special process. The first special process called is the remove party special process, which simply disbands the team, which is required to do further changes. Then it adds a new level 100 female Vulpix, recruited at place 10, to the assembly. It will be at the next free position, which is 5. It then calls a not-exist patch, which set her HP to 999. It now swaps the player with the Vulpix. The new player, the Vulpix, is now at the assembly ID 0 and the old player is now at assembly ID 5. It then calls the special process 51, which sets the team to hero only. Please note that this is an alternate way to call it. And then it adds the old player, which is at position 5, as a teammate. Something to keep in mind is that the sprite of the player doesn't change as soon as the player changes. It reloads at a new scene, but it can also be reloaded by removing and reloading the layer the player is located. The easiest way to handle this is simply to have an actor which is supposed to be the new player, replace the old player at the appropriate moment. And that's all. You should now know how to manage your team with special processes. If you encounter a problem, you can ask in the scripting help channel of the Sky Temple Discord server. I'll make sure to be present here to answer your question related to special processes.